call the meeting to order. Madam Clerk, if you could do a roll call, please.
Ms. Farrell.
Here.
Mrs. Frank.
Here.
Mr. Howard.
Here.
Mr. Engelke.
Here.
Mr. Smith.
Here.
Vice Mayor Bolt.
Here.
Mayor Pachota.
Here. We'll stand for the... All right, we will go on to 25-0039. Ms. Farrell, you said you have a question on that one?
Yes. At the current time, it appears that we don't need to have a beach renourishment, and so it's paused a bit, which is a good thing. I guess one of the gifts from Hurricane Milton, as I understand it. However, from what I was seeing in the documentation, we need to renourish before 2027, and is that true? And what if the beach is still okay by that point in time? Do we have to do it anyway?
Good morning. For the record, Assistant City Engineer John Kramer. You are correct that these storms have changed the conditions of the beach. And actually, the current renourishment project has been delayed while the Army Corps can survey the beach and see exactly what needs to be done. Not all of the beach was altered in the storm, so renourishment is necessary. It may be that the scope of the renourishment may change depending on how sand was deposited.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, I'll entertain a motion on 25-0039.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Vice Mayor?
I move that item 25-0039 be approved.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Howard. All in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, passes unanimously. We are back. On to presentations 25-0042. We've got Assistant City Manager James Clinch and Assistant City Engineer John Kramer. If you guys would like to give us your resiliency presentation.
Thank you, Mayor. As you said, I'm James Clinch, your Assistant City Manager, and I'm joined by John Kramer, our Assistant City Engineer. So we are going to be presenting on resilience, and we're going to cover a couple of broad topics. Mainly, the origination of this presentation was from Councilmember Farrell, who wanted to learn more about resilience related to a conference that was given back in September. But we're also going to tie this back in locally with strategic planning coming up just next Monday. It's the perfect time to talk about this topic, and it does impact and affect every single project, every strategic initiative that we're working on for the next 5 years. So with that, we'll jump right in. As I said, the origination of this request through Ms. Farrell came from the Florida Resilience Conference, which I was fortunate enough to attend back in September. The third annual, so a pretty new conference, and it's put on by our Florida Shore and Beach Preservation Association. Kind of a mouthful there, but they are our advocates, nonprofit that supports our beaches. So renourishment, environmental impacts, critical to resiliency, and they put this conference on every year. Really is a fantastic conference. It's open to elected officials as well as city engineers, city managers, kind of a diverse group of attendees. And, some great topics. We're going to talk about resilience today, and it really is an incredibly broad and somewhat nebulous topic. So the conference focuses on different tracks: smart planning, beach management, energy, and infrastructure. So those are all going on at the same time, so you can really get something for everybody's interest there in terms of resilience. It's not just engineers that are there. The conference this year is actually going to be even closer. It's going to be down at the Sunseeker Resort in Port Charlotte area there, September 17th through 19th. So keep that in mind if you have any interest. With that, we're going to jump into our agenda today. But before I do that, I'll just point out it was a little bit ironic when this request for a presentation was made. We had experienced Hurricane Debbie in August, which we were very fortunate to not have nearly the impacts that North County, Sarasota County had. But immediately after the presentation request, we were impacted by two significant, the most significant storm surge events we've experienced in this community, back to back. So just more relevant than ever, this topic, and we're looking forward to talking about it. So we're going to give a brief overview of what resilience is, because I think a lot of people have different definitions for it. So we'll give you ours, and we're happy to talk about that. We'll talk about why resilience resiliency is so important and why everybody's talking about it and funding it right now. Then we're going to bring it back to Venice, and John's going to tell us about our coastal resilience plan, the current projects that we're working on for resiliency, and then some future resilience projects that we're going to be talking about next week at strategic planning. So starting with kind of a general definition, when we talk about resilience, we're talking about really urban resilience for a community. For us, it's the city of Venice, obviously. And a good definition is the ability to survive, recover, and adapt to a disaster or disruption. And I think that's a great definition because it accepts the fact that we're going to have disasters. We're going to have disruptions. There's no getting around that as any community, especially a coastal community. So resilience is not about preventing disasters from occurring. It's about preparing so that we can survive, recover, and adapt to be stronger when the next one hits us. And when you think about urban resilience, I typically go to infrastructure first. That's what you think about. We got to make everything stronger. We got to build back higher. And that is a very significant, important part of resilience, but it's only one piece of resilience. When we talk about resiliency, it really involves the entire community. And you've got to think about being resilient in other areas, environmentally, economic, the health and welfare of our citizens, and then social and cultural resiliency as well. And then when we think about the disruptions and the disasters that we experience, again, we always go to hurricanes. That's our most frequent and most common disruption. But in terms of resiliency, we also have to think about any disruption or disaster that could happen. It could be man-made, could be a financial disruption, could be a pandemic. Resiliency applies to any potential disaster that your community may encounter. And I stole this from our one of the presentations at the conference because I thought it was really a great way to demonstrate how you measure resilience. Like I said, there's not a clear metric to measure resilience. You know, one city may be more resilient in one area but less in another. This did a great job, I think, of showing what we're talking about when we talk about being a resilient city. So the green line there shows you a resilient city, and when there's not a disaster, it's pretty much business as usual, right? Your community health is on the left side there on the y-axis, and it continues to go up over time as we're doing projects and investing back into the community. But then you have the incident, the natural disaster, the hurricane, the fire, the tornado, the pandemic, and there's an impact to the community's health and prosperity every time. There's really no avoiding that. But the difference between a resilient city and an unresilient city is that recovery process. So a resilient city, you'll see in the chart there, you're going to have less of an impact, certainly, but the biggest difference is you're going to recover quicker. We're going to get back on our feet and then get back to that positive trajectory for our community. So now diving in a little bit more about the conference, one of the biggest advantages of attending this conference is there are representatives from all of our major state and federal agencies, Army Corps of Engineers, FDEP, Economic Development, it's SwiftMud, all of these organizations send either their directors or vice presidents, and they give presentations, and it's mainly focused on funding, what opportunities are on the radar for the next year for them, and how we can take advantage of those opportunities. So one of the presentations was on Resilient Florida, which is the state's big resiliency grant program. It's a program that we've been able to take advantage of, and it's one that I think in the future is going to continue to grow. So it's one we want to pay attention to. It's only been around for, I think, about 3 years at this point, and they've already distributed over $1.8 billion for resiliency initiatives throughout the state of Florida. And then this past year, DEP actually took the initiative to create the first ever comprehensive statewide flooding and sea level rise vulnerability assessment. You can find it online. It's very helpful at identifying the risks throughout the state of Florida and mapping out future scenarios. Great to see how the state has embraced resiliency, and the amount of funding that's going towards that, I don't think is going to change. I think it's just going to go up from here. And why is that? I mean, why has resiliency become such a hot topic in the forefront of all of our state and federal legislators? Well, a couple big reasons for Florida specifically. Number one is coastal urbanization. You know, this is the map on the right-hand side there is the coast of Venice, and the little dots are all the impacts from Hurricanes Helene and Milton. And you can see they're focused on the coastal, more vulnerable areas of our city. And like a lot of cities in Florida, we've got some of our highest valued properties, our most expensive private assets and public assets in some very vulnerable areas. That's just the way Florida has developed over the last 100 years. And the second big reason why resiliency is so important is we're dealing with a changing natural environment. Our environment that we're preparing for and adapting for is different today than it was 50 years ago. The conference does a great job of staying very apolitical. I think resiliency historically has had some political challenges, but it's gotten to a good place where everybody kind of recognizes, hey, look, we're going to avoid denialism. We're not going to talk about how this isn't happening. We all pretty much recognize this change is happening in our world. But we're also going to avoid doomerism as well. This is not the end of the world. We're going to adapt, and we're going to change, and we're going to become more resilient into the future. So the conference does a great job of really sticking to the science and looking at what data is available and how do we respond to that. And that's a really healthy conversation for communities to be having. We are seeing temperatures rising. We're seeing extreme rainfall events. We're seeing hurricanes intensify like they never have before. And of course, we're seeing sea level rise, all of which are very important and are going to impact us into the future. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on the science side, but I would certainly encourage anyone who's watching this to take advantage. The resources are really prolific now. You can get to data at your fingertips through the internet. It's great, and you can really start to understand what we need to be prepared for and what we need to respond to. There's a sea level calculator that came out just this past year through NOAA, and it's really dynamic, really neat way to look at the data. They have a station in St. Petersburg and a station in Fort Myers. They don't have one in Venice yet, but these are, obviously very close proximity to us and good indicators of what's happening in Venice. And the data is really comprehensive. It actually goes back to the 40s. So you can actually look at data from the 40s and see how things have changed over time. And it really helps. These hurricanes showed us a lot, but a lot of the stories that I heard from talking to residents in the field were, I've lived here since the 60s and nothing like this has ever happened before. How could this possibly happen? And I think the answer to that is we're not in the same world we were in the 50s and 60s. Things are a little bit different now, and we've got to adapt to that and be prepared. So with that, I'm going to pass it off to John to talk a little bit about resiliency here in Venice and what we're working on for the future. John?
Thank you, James. 2021 marked the start of the city's formal resiliency planning with the development of the Venice Coastal Resiliency Plan. The plan identified vulnerabilities in critical facilities, and it also recommended adaptations to improve resiliency and identified funding opportunities. The plan was completed in April and presented to council in June, and we also updated the plan and presented that in 2024. Some of the funding opportunities identified included the Federal Hazard Mitigation Grant Program, commonly referred to as HMGP funding. And past projects that took advantage of this funding included Fire Station 51 City Hall generator, East Mass Avenue drainage, and Westgate drainage. Our current HMGP funded project is public water supply well backup generators. We also have pending applications for the Fire Station 52 generator and Public Works hardening and generator. We expect additional funding from the aftermath of Hurricanes Debby, Helene, and Milton. We also take advantage of the state's Resilient Florida program for grant funding. That actually funded the update to our resilience plan And we currently are receiving funding for the Tarpon Center Drive Nature-Based Flood Mitigation Pilot Project. Current resilience projects include the Beach Renourishment with its protective berm, the Tarpon Center Drive Flood Mitigation Project, public water supply well backup generators, and the recovery work conducted by our building department. They ensure that improved properties are brought up to current code standards. It's also important to note that resilience is factored into every one of our city projects, whether it's an explicit resilience project or not.
John, if I can cut in real quick, we put the logo there of the National Flood Insurance Program. You know, not all of our resiliency initiatives are physical projects, right? So our participation in the NFIP, which we talked about in the past, is probably one of the greatest resiliency initiatives that we provide to our residents. It takes a lot of work. On April 1st, we're going to be increasing our CRS rating from a 6 to a 5, which saves our residents money and gives them access to what is the greatest protection we can, which is insurance if you're in a vulnerable location.
And we have here a rendering of the Tarpon Center Drive Flood Mitigation Project. What you can see here are the glass flood barrier walls that are going to extend about 3 feet above the existing seawall. That's a nice way to effectively raise the seawall height but maintain the view there. Future resilience projects include the relocation of Fire Station 52 out of the flood zone, a feasibility study for relocating the water plant, and I'm sure you know that the Island Beach wastewater treatment plant was previously moved to the east side location, so there is a precedence for that. The development of our stormwater master plan, the Flamingo Ditch feasibility study, solid waste and fleet maintenance facility upgrades due to the age of the facilities, and the reconstruction of Humphreys Park at the South Jenny to improve its resiliency.
Thanks, John. So to wrap it up here, you know, resiliency is something that has become more important than ever and is going to continue to grow and be a part of every strategic project that we talk about really from here on out. There's going to continue to be local, state, and federal funding available for this, so that's something we want to pursue aggressively. As John said, we're actively participating in these programs. We have been for the last 5 years, but they're expected to grow, so we're going to be make sure we're a part of that. It's an essential part of our capital improvement program, but it's also part of really everything we do as a city to be prepared and to adapt to our environment. Something just to kind of keep in mind as we get into strategic planning and budget development, may not be something for this next fiscal year, but something to consider is a resiliency manager. You know, as a small city, we do a lot with a little, and we spread out a lot of duties between our departments when it comes to emergency management, resiliency, sustainability, those type of initiatives. Most larger organizations have either an individual or a team of individuals, like the county, to help manage resiliency, pursue grants, and kind of coordinate amongst all the departments. Certainly, that's something I think in the future that we would want to implement. You know, the timing of that, we'll wait and see, because there's a lot of needs for next year. But I did want to kind of point that out as an opportunity. And probably the most important point as we talk about and close out our resiliency conversation is that resiliency really is a community-wide responsibility. And that's important to remember, I think, after the hurricanes. You know, we've seen that firsthand more than ever, where the local government has a very important role to play, but there's responsibility on the private property owners, on our businesses, on our nonprofits, on our local charitable organizations, religious institutions. We are all in this together because there's so much to be done, and we all play that part. So thank you for your time, and I would be glad to answer any questions you have at this time.
If there's any questions for either of the two, please push a request to speak button. Ms. Farrell?
Yes, Jonathan, could you go back a couple slides to the one that had the water treatment plant? It's in the future, of course, but there were several things. Okay, yeah, the water plant feasibility study. Who is going to do it? Would that be in-house or a consultant? And when do you see that happening? Is it imminent, or are we off several years?
So
Do you
my-
have an idea?
Sure. So my understanding is our utilities department will be managing that project. They are currently wrapping up their potable water master plan, and then they'll be starting the feasibility study. So it should be starting this year. I'm not sure how long it's going to take, but it will utilize a consultant. So it'll be managed in-house, but it will utilize a consultant who's going to look at our water plant, analyze it for vulnerabilities, and come up with some different options, kind of like Flamingo Ditch, to what would be a cost-feasible solution.
Okay, thank you,
You're welcome.
thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Smith?
Mr. Clinch, Mr. Kramer, thank you for the presentation. Wonderful. I'm happy for each and every effort that you described and that we have underway already, and you'd be commended for those. I do think there's an opportunity and probably a desire to go even further in this area. I note that on January 6th, there was an announcement from the federal government that the Congress had passed and the President had signed new legislation addressing these concerns after the recent storms. And they had passed $1.35 billion in additional funding for resiliency efforts. It's really interesting to me that those have to be community-driven resilience and hazard mitigation, planning and design and implementation of transformational projects. And one of the conditions for a grant is, really significantly, that you be in, that the city be participating in the National Flood Insurance Program, and that it not be on probation, not be suspended, or not be in a situation where it's withdrawn from that program. And I know you've spoken a few times about the importance of that program to us and maintaining our status where we are not on probation, as numerous other cities in Florida are. So I thank you for past cautions in that area. I'm hopeful that the city's going to have a major presence at a program in Charlotte County on February 19th. That is a program being organized by the Regional Planning Council as the first step in inviting projects that would utilize this $1.35 billion in resiliency efforts. And we are sitting on projects that we know are coming forward, including the Golden Beach Flamingo Ditch type thing. And they have a very simple opening process of just a one-page description to get a placeholder in toward that grant money. They're asking city officials to appear and make a presentation on any potential future grant. I'm hoping that we'll be there in a big way so that we can be in line for some of that funding. And congratulations on past grants in that way. The other thing I wanted, you mentioned that we believe we're improving our community rating from 6 to 5. And it was fascinating to me that the county has a 5 rating. Of course, 1 is the highest rating, so we want to get higher. But they said at a recent workshop they intend to raise their ranking to a 2 through numerous actions that they plan to take. And I hope we'll follow their lead. One of the things that just struck me was they said that they were improving the ability of the area around Venice to withstand more rainfall and increasing what the expectation that could handle a 10-inch rainfall to 11.2 inches, I think. And I'm not sure what we're saying is ours, but if they're doing things like this in stormwater improvement plans with the goal of raising their community rating to a 2, I hope we can do everything we can do to seek that same thing. And one of the things that I learned from their conference was that the land development regulations and concurrency in the planning and zoning aspects of our city create that rating. And the things that we have to look at, and I think that we may want to look at, as the county is, include lot coverage, include setbacks, the ability of a piece of land to absorb stormwater and not have it run off that property. So I hope that all that will be part of our focus as we go forward on resiliency. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'll just, thank you for the comments about the NFIP. That is something that every day our building department, engineering, planning and zoning staff are working with our residents to maintain that compliance, and it's sometimes a difficult job because it's hard for someone to understand the importance of those rules, and we have the burden of enforcing the rules. So thank you for that comment. And then I just want to kind of point out, resiliency is, for the most part, a policy discussion. And so I do think that there's a lot of policy discussions coming in the future about how our policies need to adapt, because that's how this all starts, is adapting our policies to be prepared for the future disaster. So thank you for that.
Anyone else? Okay. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your presentation.